Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Horizon, watching the massive alien ship grow larger on the main screen. His hands were steady, but his heart was beating fast. This was the moment humanity had been waiting for since they first reached the stars, first contact with an alien civilization. "Captain, they're responding to our greeting," said Lieutenant Kate Williams from her communications station. Her voice was calm, but Jake could hear the excitement underneath. "They're speaking perfect English." "Put them through," Jake ordered. The screen filled with the image of something that made several crew members step back. The alien was huge, at least 8 feet tall, with dark blue skin that looked like armor. It had 4 arms and a face that reminded Jake of an insect, but with intelligent eyes that seemed to study everything. "I am War Prime Thax of the Zephyrian Empire," the alien said in a deep voice. "You are the humans we have heard about." Jake straightened his uniform. "I am Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earthship Horizon. We come in peace, seeking friendship and trade." Thax made a sound that might have been laughter. "Peace. Yes, we shall see about that. We have agreed to meet you at the neutral station. Follow our ships." The communication ended, leaving Jake and his crew in silence. Dr. Lisa Chen, the ship's xenobiologist, was the first to speak. "Well, that was interesting." "Interesting is one word for it," said Commander Ryan Brooks, the security chief. He was a big man who had served in Earth's military before joining the exploration service. "Did you see how many ships they brought?" "We're outnumbered 50-1. Jake nodded. The Zephyrian fleet was impressive. Their ships were sleek and dark, like deadly sharks moving through space. The UES Horizon looked like a toy next to them. "Remember? We're here to make friends," Jake said. "Dr. Chen, are you ready with the cultural presentation?" Lisa nodded. It spent months preparing materials to show the aliens what humanity was like. History, art, music, and yes, some of their wars. She believed that showing both the good and bad of humanity would build trust. The space station was neutral territory, built by a species called the Traders, who served as middlemen between different civilizations. It was a massive structure that could hold ships from a dozen different species. The Horizon docked next to one of the smaller Zephyrian vessels. Jake led a small team to the meeting room. Besides Lisa and Ryan, he brought Kate Williams and 2 other officers. They walked through corridors filled with aliens from many different worlds. Some looked almost human. Others were so strange that Jake couldn't figure out which end was the head. The meeting room was large and circular, the table that could be adjusted for different species. Thax was already there with 5 other Zephyrians up close. They were even more impressive. Their skin really did look like natural armor, and their forearms moved with perfect coordination. "Welcome, humans," Thax said. "Please, sit. We have much to discuss." The first hour went well. They talked about trade, about the regions of space each species controlled, and about the possibility of human worlds joining the Zephyrian Empire. As allies, Thax explained that the Zephyrians had been expanding across the galaxy for over 2,000 years, bringing peace and prosperity to hundreds of worlds. "We do not conquer," Thax said. "We invite." Most species see the benefits of joining our empire: protection, technology, trade. It is logical. Jake noticed how often Thax used the word logical. Everything the Zephyrians did seemed to be based on logic and reason. Their wars were fought until one side clearly won, then the losers surrendered with honor. Their empire grew because it made sense for smaller species to join rather than fight. "We would like to show you something about our people," Lisa said, "to help you understand who we are." She activated a portable projector and began showing images of Earth. Beautiful landscapes, great cities, works of art. The Zephyrians watched with interest, making notes on small devices. Then Lisa moved to human history. She showed them the ancient civilizations, the great empires, the spread of humanity across their world. She talked about human achievements in science, art, and philosophy, but she also showed them the wars. The first images were from ancient battles. Warriors with swords and spears fighting for their homes and families. The Zephyrians seemed to approve. War for territory and resources was logical. Then came the more recent conflicts. The great wars of the 20th century, when humans fought with machines and chemicals and fire. Lisa showed them footage from World War II, the beaches of Normandy, the ruins of cities, the liberation of prison camps. She could see that Thax was paying very close attention now. His forearms were moving, and what Lisa had learned was a sign of agitation in Zephyrians. "These humans," Thax said slowly, "they continued fighting even when victory seemed impossible." "Yes," Lisa replied. "At Stalingrad, Soviet forces fought for every building, every room, for months. The city was completely destroyed, but they never gave up." She showed more footage. The Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, where Jewish fighters with almost no weapons held off the German army for weeks. The Battle of the Alamo, where a small group of Americans fought to the death rather than surrender. The kamikaze pilots of Japan, who flew their planes into enemy ships. With each example, Thax seemed to grow more uncomfortable. His mandibles clicked together in a rhythm that Lisa recognized as distress. "These conflicts," Thax said, "what did your people fight for? Territory? Resources?" Jake and Lisa exchanged glances. Sometimes Jake said, "But often for ideas, freedom, democracy, the right to live as we choose." "Ideas," Thax repeated, "not logical things, not land or food or safety. Ideas." "That's right," Lisa said. "Humans will fight and die for things that can't be touched or measured. Honor, justice, love. Of country?" Thax stood suddenly, his great height making him tower over the humans. "I must consult with my commanders," he said. "This meeting is ended for now." The Zephyrians left quickly, leaving the human delegation confused and worried, it thought. The presentation went well, but clearly something had upset their new alien friends. Back on the horizon, Jake called a meeting with his senior staff. "What do you think went wrong?" he asked. Ryan shook his head. "Maybe they don't like our violent history, but they're warriors themselves," Kate pointed out. "Their whole society is built around military strength." Lisa was quiet for a long moment. "I think it was something else," she finally said. "Did you see how he reacted when we talked about fighting for ideas? I think that's what bothered him." "Why would that be a problem?" Jake asked. Lisa looked out at the Zephyrian ships surrounding them. "I don't know. I have a feeling we're about to find out." War Prime Thax paced back and forth in his private quarters aboard the Zephyrian flagship. His forearms moved in complex patterns, a sign of deep worry among his people. The meeting with the humans had disturbed him more than any battle he had ever fought. He activated the quantum communicator and waited for the connection to reach across the vast distances of space. Soon, the image of Supreme Commander Vexhai appeared on his screen. Vexhai was ancient, even by Zephyrian standards, her armor-like skin bearing the scars of 100 campaigns. "War Prime Thax," she said in the formal tone used for official communications. "Report on the human contact." "Supreme Commander, we have a problem," Thax began. "These humans are not like any species we have encountered before." Vexhai's mandibles clicked with interest. "Explain." Thax called up the recordings from the meeting and began playing them for his commander. He watched her face as she saw the human warfare footage, the same footage that had troubled him so deeply. "They fight without logic," Thax said. "Look at this battle they call Thermopylae. 300 warriors against thousands. They knew they would die, but they fought anyway. Not for territory or resources, but for something they called honor. Perhaps they were simply poor strategists," Vexhai suggested. "No, Supreme Commander. Watch this." Thax showed her footage from World War II. This city called Stalingrad. The defenders could have surrendered and saved lives. Instead, they fought for months, building by building, room by room. The entire city was destroyed. Millions died. But they never gave up. Vexa was quiet for a long time as she watched. The images of human warfare, tanks burning in city streets, soldiers fighting in the ruins of buildings, civilians taking up weapons to defend their homes. "Show me more," she ordered. Thax displayed other examples. The Warsaw Ghetto, where humans with almost no weapons fought the German army for weeks. The Alamo, where Americans chose death over surrender. The kamikaze attacks, where Japanese pilots turned their planes into weapons. In every case, Thax explained they had the option to surrender. Logic said they should surrender, but they chose to fight instead. For what purpose? Vexai asked. Ideas, Supreme Commander? Abstract concepts? Freedom, honor, revenge, love of homeland? Things that cannot be measured or traded? Vexai was silent for several minutes. In that time, Thax remembered his own military career. He'd been fighting for the Empire for over 60 years. He had conquered the Nexari, whose crystal bodies could absorb energy weapons. He had defeated the Machina Collective, whose robotic army seemed endless. He had even beaten the Ethereal Confederation, whose psychic powers could move mountains. But in every case, the enemy had been logical, fought for survival, for resources, for territory. When it became clear they could not win, they surrendered. It was the civilized way, the logical way. The Nexari had surrendered when half their fleet was destroyed. The Machina Collective had agreed to peace terms when their central computer calculated they could not win. The Ethereals had joined the Empire when they realized resistance was futile. All of them had breaking points. All of them could be reasoned with. War Prime Vexai finally spoke. In your professional opinion, could we defeat these humans in warfare? Thax had been dreading this question. Yes, Supreme Commander. Our technology is superior. Our fleet is larger. In a direct confrontation, we would win, but Vexai prompted, but the cost would be unlike anything we have ever faced. These humans do not understand the concept of acceptable losses. They become more dangerous when they are losing, not less. Thax pulled up tactical analyses his staff had been working on since the meeting. Our war computers have run simulations. We could take their home world, but they would fight for every city, every building, every room. They would use guerrilla tactics, suicide attacks, psychological warfare. How long? Vexai asked. Years, Supreme Commander. Maybe decades. And even after we won, resistance would continue. They would never truly accept defeat. Thax hesitated, then added the most troubling part. Our psychologists believe that a prolonged war with humans would change us. To defeat an enemy that fights without logic, we would have to abandon our own logical approach to warfare. We would have to become like them. The thought sent a chill through both Zephyrians. Their civilization was built on logic, order, and reason. It was what made them different from the savage species they had conquered and civilized. Meanwhile, back on the space station, Dr. Lisa Chen was conducting her own analysis. She had obtained permission to study Zephyrian historical records that were publicly available. What she found was fascinating. The Zephyrian Empire had expanded steadily for 2,000 years. But their method was always the same. They would arrive at a new world with overwhelming force. They would demonstrate their superior technology and military might. Then they would offer a choice: join the Empire peacefully and gain all its benefits, or resist and be conquered. Most species chose to join. It was logical. Why fight a war you could not win? The few species that chose to fight were quickly defeated. The Zephyrians were skilled warriors and brilliant strategists. But more importantly, their enemies always had breaking points. When losses became too high, when victory became impossible, the enemy would surrender. Lisa shared her findings with Captain Morrison and the senior staff. So they've never faced an enemy that wouldn't quit, Ryan Brooks said. Exactly, Lisa replied. Every species they've encountered has been logical about warfare. They fight until it becomes clear they can't win. Then they surrender to minimize losses. Jake Morrison studied the tactical reports, but humans don't work that way. No, we don't, Lisa agreed. We have this strange habit of fighting harder. When we're losing, we call it courage, determination, the fighting spirit. To them, it probably looks like madness. Kate Williams looked up from her communication equipment. Captain, I'm detecting increased activity in the Zephyrian fleet. Ships moving into new positions, communications increasing. Are they preparing to attack? Brian asked, his hand moving instinctively toward his sidearm. I don't think so, Jake said slowly. I think they're scared. The idea seemed ridiculous. Zephyrians had 50 ships to their one, had superior technology and thousands of years of military experience. How could they be scared of a handful of humans? But as Jake watched the alien fleet repositioning around them, he began to understand. The Zephyrians weren't afraid of losing a fight with humans. They were afraid of what winning such a fight would cost them. Back on the Zephyrian flagship, Thax was reaching the same conclusion. He stood at the great window of his command center, looking out at the small human ship surrounded by his mighty fleet. Such a tiny vessel, carrying perhaps 100 humans. They could destroy it with a single shot. But those humans represented something that terrified the greatest military mind in the Zephyrian Empire. They represented a species that would fight for ideas instead of logic, species that became more dangerous when cornered, a species that might force the Zephyrians to abandon everything that made them civilized. Thax made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. Instead of waiting for orders from the High Command, he would speak to the humans again. But this time he would tell them the truth. Captain Jake Morrison received the message from War Prime Thax 3 hours after their first meeting had ended. The alien leader requested a private conference with only essential personnel from both sides. Jake could hear something different in Thax's voice through the translator. The confident warrior from their first meeting seemed troubled, almost nervous. This could be a trap, Commander Ryan Brooks warned, as they prepared to return to the space station. Why the sudden change in behavior? I don't think it's a trap, Dr. Lisa Chen said. I've been studying their body language during the recordings. Thax showed clear signs of distress when we talked about our wars. Something about human warfare really bothered him. Jake made his decision. We'll go, but stay alert. Ryan, you. And Kate? Come with me, Lisa. I want you there too. Your expertise might be crucial. The meeting room looked the same as before, but the atmosphere was completely different. Thax sat alone, except for 2 other Zephyrians who stayed near the walls, like guards. The War Prime's usual perfect military posture was gone. His forearms moved restlessly, and his mandibles clicked in patterns that Lisa had learned indicated anxiety. Captain Morrison, Thax began, his voice quieter than before. I must tell you something that may change everything between our species. Sat down carefully. We're listening. Thax was quiet for a long moment, as if choosing his words carefully. For 2,000 years, the Zephyrian Empire has expanded across this galaxy. We have brought peace and order to hundreds of worlds. We have absorbed dozens of species into our civilization. That's very impressive, Jake said. You do not understand, Thax continued. When I say absorbed, I mean that these species joined us willingly. After we demonstrated our superior strength, they chose to become part of our empire rather than fight. Lisa leaned forward. They all surrendered. Yes, it was logical. Why fight a war you cannot win? Why watch your people die for nothing? Better to join a stronger civilization and benefit from our technology and protection? Thax stood and began pacing, his great height making the room seem smaller. But your species is different. Your people do not think logically about warfare. So, Jake asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. You fight for ideas, Thax said, turning to face them. Abstract concepts that cannot be touched or measured. Freedom, honor, justice. These things are not logical reasons for war. Ryan Brooks spoke up. Maybe not to you, but they're important to us. That is exactly the problem, Thax said. Voice carried a tone that made all the humans lean back slightly. Do you know what happens when logical beings fight illogical ones? Before anyone could answer, Thax activated a holographic display. It showed star maps, fleet movements, casualty reports. The data was clearly from Zephyrian military computers. Have run every simulation possible, Thax explained. Direct assault on your homeworld? Blockade of your solar system. Gradual conquest of your colonies. In every scenario, we achieve victory. Then what's the problem? Jake asked. Thax's mandibles clicked rapidly. The cost. In every simulation, the war lasts for years. Sometimes decades. Your people fight building by building, room by room. They use tactics that our computers classify as irrational. Suicide attacks. Guerrilla warfare. Psychological operations designed to break enemy morale. The holographic display changed to show casualty projections. The numbers made Jake's breath catch in his throat. Millions of deaths on both sides. Your people become more dangerous when... They are losing, Thax continued. Every other species we have fought becomes weaker as their situation becomes hopeless. But humans fight harder. They find hope where none should exist. Lisa was studying the projections carefully. What's your point, War Prime? Thax turned off the display and looked directly at her. My point, Dr. Chen, is that to defeat your species, we would have to become like you. We would have to abandon logic and embrace the same irrational fury that drives human warfare. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Jake was the first to speak. You're afraid that fighting us would change your civilization. Exactly, Thax said. The Zephyrian Empire is built on order, logic, and reason. These are the qualities that make us superior to the savage species we have civilized. Oh. But a war with humanity would force us to become savage ourselves. Kate Williams had been quiet throughout the meeting, but now she asked the question that was on everyone's mind. So what are you going to do about it? X sat down heavily, his great weight making the chair creak. That is what I must decide. The High Command is divided. Some believe we should strike first, destroy your homeworld before you can spread to other systems. They argue that waiting will only make the problem worse. And the others? Jake asked. Others believe we should simply avoid your species entirely, build a barrier of neutral zones between our territories, and hope you destroy yourselves before becoming a threat. Ryan leaned forward. But you have a third option in mind. Thax looked surprised that the human had read him so easily. Yes, though it goes against everything the Zephyrian Empire has done for 2,000 years. What is it? Lisa asked. Alliance. Thax said simply. True partnership between equals. The humans exchanged glances. This was not what they had expected when they came to make first contact. You see, Thax continued, the galaxy faces threats that our logical approach to warfare cannot handle. There are entities beyond our borders that do not follow the rules of civilized conflict. They cannot be reasoned with or defeated through traditional means. Jake had heard rumors about these threats from other species they had encountered. You're talking about the Void Swarm? Thax's forearm stopped moving, a sign of intense focus. You know of them? It's only stories, Jake admitted. Some of the traitor species mentioned them. Entities that consume entire star systems. They are. Real, Thax said grimly. And they are coming. Our scouts have detected their advanced forces at the edge of the galaxy. They show no interest in negotiation or conquest. They simply consume everything in their path. Lisa was beginning to understand. Your logical approach to warfare doesn't work against them. Correct. They have no breaking point. They cannot be reasoned with. They fight with the same irrational determination that characterizes human warfare. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. You want humans to help you fight these things? I want humans to teach us how to fight like you do, Thax corrected. How to find hope when hope is gone. How to continue fighting when logic says you should. Surrender. How to be warriors instead of just soldiers. The room was quiet again as everyone processed this revelation. Finally, Jake spoke, and in return, humanity would become the first species in galactic history to join the Zephyrian Empire as true equals. Full access to our technology, our trade networks, our knowledge. Not as subjects, but as partners. Kate looked skeptical. Why should we trust you? You just admitted that some of your people want to destroy us. Thax made a sound that might have been laughter. Because, Lieutenant Williams, I am more afraid of what my people might become if we try to conquer you than I am of the Void Swarm. Itself, at least the Swarm only wants to consume our bodies. A war with humanity would consume our souls. Jake stood and walked to the window overlooking the docking bays. He could see both human and Zephyrian ships, representing two very different approaches to existence. Logic versus passion. Order versus chaos. But maybe, he thought, the galaxy needed both. I'll need to contact Earth Command, he said finally. Of course, Thax replied. Captain Morrison, time is not our ally. The Void Swarm grows stronger with each world they consume. And my own High Command grows more impatient for a decision about humanity. Jake turned back to face the alien warrior. How long do we have? Days, perhaps weeks, Thax said. After that, the choice may be taken from both of us. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the communication room of the UES Horizon, waiting for the quantum link to connect him with Earth Command. The delay seemed endless, but finally the familiar face of Admiral Helen Carter appeared on the screen. Her expression was serious as Jake explained everything that had happened. So, let me understand this correctly, Admiral Carter said after Jake finished his report. The most powerful military force in the galaxy is afraid to fight us because we're too stubborn to quit? That's a simple way to put it, but yes, Jake replied. They think a war with humanity would corrupt their entire civilization. Admiral Carter was quiet for a long moment. And this void swarm threat is real? According to Thax, yes. And our own long-range sensors have picked up some strange readings at the galaxy's edge. Something is definitely out there. What? What's your recommendation, Captain? Jake had been thinking about this question for hours. I believe we should accept their alliance proposal, but with conditions. We maintain our independence, keep our own military, and have equal say in all decisions. Agreed. Begin negotiations immediately. Earth Command authorizes you to act with full diplomatic authority. The connection ended, leaving Jake with a decision that would affect all of human history. He called his senior staff together and shared Earth Command's response. So we're really doing this? Ryan Brooks asked, lying with aliens who could wipe us out if they wanted to. They could try, Dr. Lisa Chen said thoughtfully, but I think Thax is right. They're more afraid of us than we are of them. Meanwhile, aboard the Zephyrian flagship, War Prime Thax was having his own difficult conversation with Supreme Commander Vexai. The ancient commander listened to his proposal with growing alarm. You want to give these humans equal status? In our empire, she demanded. No species has ever been offered such terms. No species has ever posed such a unique threat, Thax replied. Supreme Commander, I have fought in 100 battles across 50 worlds. I have never encountered an enemy that frightened me. But these humans do not fight like any rationale species. They fight like forces of nature. Vexai studied the tactical reports Thax had sent her. Perhaps you are overthinking this. They are primitives with inferior technology. Technology means nothing if you are willing to die for your beliefs, Thax said. Look at their history again. At Thermopylae, 300 Spartans held off an army of thousands. They knew they would die, but they fought anyway. Less than 200 defenders faced several thousand attackers. They could have surrendered and lived, but they chose to fight to the death. He pulled up more examples. In their Second World War, the city of Leningrad was under siege for almost 3 years. The people were starving, but they never surrendered. They ate grass, leather, anything to survive. Over 1 million died, but the city never fell. What is your point, Warprem? My point is that humans do not calculate acceptable losses the way we do. They will sacrifice everything for abstract concepts like freedom and honor. In a war with us, they would turn every world into Thermopylae, every city into Leningrad. Vix was silent for several minutes. Finally, she spoke. And you believe they could help us against the Void Swarm? I believe they are the only species that could help us. The swarm cannot be reasoned with or defeated through conventional tactics. They are like a force of nature, consuming everything in their path. Perhaps it takes another force of nature to stop them. The negotiation between humans and Zephyrians took place over the next 2 days. Captain Morrison and War Prime Thax worked out the details of an alliance that would have been impossible just weeks before. Humanity would join the Zephyrian Empire as full partners, not subjects. They would retain their own government and military, while gaining access to advanced alien technology. In return, humans would share their knowledge of unconventional warfare and help prepare for the coming threat. But the real test came when news of the alliance reached other parts of the galaxy. The reaction was immediate and severe. Captain, we're receiving multiple communications, Lieutenant Kate Williams reported. Some of the Zephyrian fleet commanders are demanding to speak with Thax immediately. On the main screen, they could see several Zephyrian ships breaking formation and moving into defensive positions. Clearly, not everyone in the alien fleet agreed with their leader's decision. War Prime Thax is requesting an emergency meeting, Kate continued. In the meeting, Room Thax looked older than before. His usually perfect posture was slumped, and his forearms moved in patterns that Lisa recognized as extreme stress. There is a problem, he announced without preamble. 3 of my fleet commanders have refused to accept the alliance. They believe I have exceeded my authority. What does that mean? Jake asked. It means civil war among the Zephyrians, Thax replied grimly. Commander Zektar has declared that I am no longer fit to lead. He has taken 12 ships and is preparing to attack your vessel. Ryan Brooks was on his feet immediately. How long do we have? Perhaps an hour? Thax said. I have 20 ships that remain loyal to me, but Zektar has more firepower. Jake made a quick decision. We need to get back to our ship. Captain Morrison, Thax called as they prepared to leave. This is exactly what I feared would happen. My people are already being torn apart by contact with yours, and we have not even fought a war. Back on the horizon, Jake called his crew to battle stations. It seemed impossible that their peaceful diplomatic mission had turned into a life or death situation, but that was exactly what had happened. Incoming transmission from the rebel Zephyrian ships, Kate reported. The face that appeared on screen was similar to Thax, but with scars across the armor, like skin and eyes that burned with anger. I am Commander Zektar. You will surrender immediately or be destroyed. This is Captain Morrison of the UES Horizon. We are here on a peaceful diplomatic mission. There can be no peace with your species, Zektar snarled. You're a corruption that must be cleansed from the galaxy. The transmission ended, and immediately the Horizon's sensors detected weapons powering up on the rebel ships. All hands to battle stations, Jake ordered. But before the first shot could be fired, something unexpected happened. The loyal Zephyrian ships moved to protect the Horizon. Placing themselves between the human vessel and Zektar's fleet, War Prime Thax is hailing us, Kate reported. Captain Morrison, Thax's voice came through the speakers. Today you will see how Zephyrians fight when we have something worth fighting for. The battle was brief, but intense. Zektar's ships had superior numbers, but Thax's forces fought with a determination that surprised everyone. Instead of the usual logical, calculated Zephyrian warfare, they fought with passion and courage. When the rebel ships finally retreated, Thax contacted the Horizon again. It is done, he said. The alliance stands. What changed? Jake asked. My warriors saw humans willing to face impossible odds for the sake of peace. They saw you refuse to run, even when faced with certain death. It reminded them why they became warriors in the first place. 3 weeks later, the first joint humans-Furian fleet assembled at the edge of known space. The Void Swarm was coming. But now the galaxy had something it had never had before, an alliance between logic and passion, between calculated strategy and desperate courage. As Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Horizon, now equipped with Zephyrian technology, he thought about Thax's final words to him. Captain, your species would have been our most terrifying enemy, but perhaps that same quality will make you our greatest ally. In the distance, strange signals indicated that the Void Swarm was already probing galactic defenses. But for the first time in galactic history, they would face an enemy that combined alien logic with human stubbornness. The universe was about to learn what happened when an unstoppable force met an immovable object, and humanity was ready to show the galaxy exactly why they never gave up.